The frontal lobes are part of the cerebral cortex and are the largest of the brain structures. They are the main site of so-called higher cognitive functions. The frontal lobes contain a number of important structures, including the prefrontal cortex, orbital frontal cortex, motor and premotor cortices, and Broca's area. These substructures are involved in attention and thought, voluntary movement, decision-making, and language. The associative functions of the frontal lobe are voluntary behaviors such as decision-making, planning, problem-solving, and thinking, voluntary motor control, cognition, intelligence, attention, language processing, and comprehension, and many others. The frontal lobes are the brain's largest structures and consequently have been associated with a large number of disorders. These include ADHD, schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder. The parietal cortex plays an important role in integrating information from different senses to build a coherent picture of the world. It integrates information from the ventral visual pathway, which processes what things are, and the dorsal visual pathway, which processes where things are. This allows us to coordinate our movement in response to the objects in our environment. It contains a number of distinct references, maps of the body, near space and distant space, which are constantly updated as we move and interact with the world. The parietal cortex processes attentional awareness of the environment, is involved in manipulating objects and representing numbers. The associative functions with the parietal cortex: perception and integration of somatosensory information, for example, touch, pressure, temperature, and pain. Visuospatial processing, spatial attention, spatial mapping, and numbers representation. The occipital cortex is the primary visual area of the brain. It receives projections from the retina via the thalamus, from where different groups of neurons separately encode different visual information such as color, orientation, and motion. Pathways from the occipital lobes reach the temporal and parietal lobes and are eventually processed consciously. Two important pathways of information originating in the occipital lobes are the dorsal and ventral streams. The dorsal stream projects to the parietal lobes and processes where objects are located. The ventral stream projects to structures in the temporal lobes and processes what objects are. The associated function with the occipital cortex is vision. The temporal lobes contain a large number of substructures whose functions include perception, face recognition, object recognition, memory acquisition, understanding language, and emotional reaction. Damage to the temporal lobe can result in an intriguing neurological deficit called agnosis, which refers to the inability to recognize specific categories as body part, color, face, music, and smell. The associative function of the temporal lobe is recognition, perception, understanding language, learning and memory, associative cognitive disorders, and schizophrenia is the cognitive disorder most closely aligned to temporal lobe dysfunction. The cerebellum monitors and regulates motor behavior, particularly automatic movements. Some recent studies have associated the cerebellum with cognitive functions such as learning and attention. Although the cerebellum accounts for roughly 10% of the total brain weight, it contains more neurons than the rest of the brain combined. The cerebellum is also one of the few mammalian brain structures where adult neurogenesis, the development of new neurons, has been confirmed. The associative function of the cerebellum is coordination of voluntary movement, motor learning, balance, reflex memory, posture, timing, and sequence learning. While playing the memory slide game of Lumosity, I engage both my frontal lobe by problem solving and my temporal lobe by memorization.